Welcome back, everybody, to the NARPM Radio Podcast. My special guest here is Jon Dwoskin, who is wrote the book Think Big Movement. And as you guys know from the intro, he's a business coach. And John and I have actually been spending quite a little bit of time together over the last couple of weeks. I was on his
Yeah.
podcast, he's on mine. We actually had a couple of meetings, and really great to have you on, John. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Pete. Appreciate you having me on the show. It was great having you on last week on my show.
So, in your book, you talk a lot about getting unstuck from
Yeah.
your business. So, talk a little bit about that. What does that mean? Like, what do people get stuck? What does stuck look like?
Yeah. It means getting in your own way. It means not knowing what your next step is with clarity. It means a feeling that you just, it's things are getting monotonous. It means you're not growing the way that you want to grow, that you're getting bogged down with things that are not leading activities, and you just have lost control of your day and kind of how to execute at a higher level.
So, like, most of our listeners are property management companies. So, being kind of letting the tail wag the dog, so to speak, and being involved in everything and having the phone ring all day long, and like doing the $10 an hour job instead of the high level thinking. Is that all kind of stuck in your business?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, especially in the property management role, there's a lot of little minutia things that happen all the time because you have different divisions, you have maintenance. I mean, you have all of these different people servicing the tenants, the owner of a building. There's so many moving parts, and so many things seem to happen at the same time. And so, if your org chart isn't set up where um, you have enough people to kind of divvy up the roles and responsibilities, and everybody kind of understands their role, and we know who's doing the $10, $15, $50, $100, 100, 500, et cetera, dollar an hour work. You really want to kind of zoom out and look. What's really important in the property management world is the lead person, the regional, who's running a lot of that in many cases. And so if you have the wrong person in place, then you're in trouble. And if you're not training those people and hiring great and keeping great and having great and retaining great, especially in the property management field, it can fall apart really, really fast.
So what I'm hearing is kind of like one of the steps, if not step one, is create your org chart. Is that kind of like,
Create
let's
your
create
org
the org
chart.
chart? Are
Yeah.
you a big fan of creating an org chart for what it looks like today, or are you a big fan of creating one for today and one for like 5 years from now?
I'm a big fan of doing one today, doing one in 6 months, doing one in 12 months, and 18 months. Yeah, really kind of zoom in on the law of proximity. Because I think if you're in growth mode, you got to reverse engineer that it takes a long time to find great, to interview and find great. So if I'm looking at an org chart and an org chart that has each person and the three leading roles and responsibilities of each person, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to grow, 20%, whatever percent I'm going to grow, which means I'm going to need X amount of additional people. All right, well, it's going to take me potentially 3 to 6 months to find those people. And so I really want to kind of lock in there. I don't, not that you can't do a 5 year org chart. I think it's great, but I think sometimes people get lost in the 5 year plan when the 12, 18-month plan or 2 year plan is really difficult. And if you don't reverse engineer to make sure that things get done, then all of a sudden you're hiring the wrong people. It just becomes a mess. What I love about your business is you can actually find people that you can delegate to and scale and build and accelerate your business at a faster rate because you've already kind of vetted a lot of them. So I think it's pretty great.
I actually built org charts for the industry, if you go to vpmsolutions.com, you can actually find org charts for the industry. When you can just take those and just start use them as a template and then just kind of change
Oh,
them up
that's great.
as you needed. So, all right. So, now I've always been taught you build the org chart for what it is today, then, plan out the next five hires and then build it for when the company is done. And really, it's more of a thinking practice to make you think outside the box.
Yeah,
I love what you said, though. So, a lot of times people don't look at that next 6 months or 12 months and they get
right,
caught up in the high level and not like, hey, this is what needs to be done to get
right.
to the
Not
5 years.
granular.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah, they get
okay.
lost. It's like just real quickly, Pete. One thing I find is, people create a business plan and then they look at it January 1st and December 30th. And there's but so a business plan and org chart, those are living documents. Those are things you should be looking at every single day and saying, okay, this person here, we can see that they're 30 days from burnout, 30 days from being overwhelmed, 30 days from having too much on their plate, which means we're behind having to hire someone because now it's just going to take longer to hire someone. And now I want to be in front of my people because I think today more than ever, uh, for sure, and I don't think this is going to change. Retention is number one. So people have options today. So if I'm gonna, put too much on somebody's plate, and I'm not thinking about recruiting and delegating and divvying up roles and responsibilities, et cetera, then that person's going to get a bonus, a bigger salary, and they're going to end up moving somewhere else. High probability. A lot of times when I'm talking to companies that are just not functioning, I come in and they're just not functioning well. I say, you know what? 50 to 60% of the people won't be here in 3 years. If and maybe even more if you keep this kind of pace. So it's I think an org chart is so important in reverse engineering and recruiting.
There's so much to unpack here. So one of the things that you said is you talked about hiring. Um, but before I get into that, you talked about some documents that you look at first of the year and last of the year.
Yeah.
In your practice, when you're helping people and you're helping people get unstuck in your coaching business, how often is a leadership team meeting, or how often are they looking at these documents, and what documents are they looking at in your practice? Like, what do you teach or coach?
Um, org charts, but most importantly, pipelines are critical. Um, Marketing, editorial calendars for marketing. I think every company needs to be thinking like a media company today. Period. The end. If you're not thinking like, if every company isn't thinking like they are a media company today, they're falling behind. There's so many companies I think that are even still behind the curve when it comes to using social, using video, using AI, whether they use ChatGPT or they have their own internal custom. People are scared to get in front of the camera, scared to post content, uh, can't keep up with the consistency. But today, business is kind of like a when you get referred a client, if you're watching TV and you go to a TV station and there's nothing there, you're not going back to that TV station. Maybe you will once. Today, everybody who's in business has to be building their TV station for when the prospect turns on your station. Because when the prospect turns on your channel, if there's nothing there, if there's no relevant information to make you credible in today's world, blogs, videos, I mean, we could name a ton of things, then you're not as relevant as you need to be. And so some people may say, well, that doesn't matter. Well, it does, because first you lose one client, then you lose two clients, and you begin to quantify. Then the generation of who's making a decision changes. The generations that are younger are relying on videos, blogs, and getting to know the people that they choose to work with. So by the time they call, they have a relationship already and they've made decisions.
You're
So
building trust through
you're
your
building
content.
trust, right? And so when you're looking at documents on a daily basis, most people aren't thinking about marketing. They're not looking at their pipeline. They're not looking at their business plan. And those three documents run your business. And then you layer on that a CRM so people know kind of who to call, and it works for them, so it saves them time. Those are the documents that they should be. And whether it's rocks you're looking at or this and the other, but your business plan, your pipeline, your marketing editorial calendar, and your business plan can be a lot of different things. I mean, I'm a business coach. I am not an EOS implementer, but for some people who use EOS, they have their level 10 meetings and their rocks, and but even so, even in that realm, it's you got to make sure that you're tapping into the intuition and your guts when it comes to any type of um, system that you're using, that it doesn't get too pragmatic, that you actually allow your intuition to settle in as well.
I would say on on some of that, like what we do here at VPM is we have our L10 meetings, our level 10 meetings each week, same day, same time, hour and a half, same structure. We have certain KPIs that we look at. I think the three that we're looking at right now is number of jobs posted per day, number of jobs filled per day, and number of phone calls made during a podcast per day. No, I think that not that third one. I'm teasing. I think the next. So we have like three KPIs, and they're they're not marketing based, but marketing activities get us to those final numbers,
Yeah,
right? If I'm not marketing and I'm not getting leads, I'm not getting jobs posted, jobs filled, or I think the last one was actually profiles created per day.
yeah,
So we look at a per day type thing. But having the same date and time changed everything for us.
yeah,
Because originally it was like, oh, we could have it when we have it. And it was like, now that we have it Tuesdays at 8:30 in the morning and everybody shows up, unless you're on vacation or sick,
yeah,
we've seen a lot, like a lot better solutions to just the business runs better. Yep.
yeah. Well, but I just want to comment on that for 1 second. I'm just going to add some commentary on that. I think what people crave but can't define, to your point, and I see this in my coaching business, which is why my coaching business, the model people really like. My coaching model, excuse me, my coaching model is a 90-minute deep dive and then 15 minutes a week or 30 minutes every other week. And typically they're at the same time, typically. And the reason people like it, because what people crave but they can't define, is they crave predictability.
Mhm.
And without predictability, they already feel more scattered today than ever before. So without predictability, they can't get grounded in something. And so, to your point, right, you have the same time and day every week. It's predictable. They can work around it and everything that they do. I see that as a big thing. I was talking to clients today. I had two clients that I was meeting with, and I won't bore you with the details, but they have this whole thing that they're doing, but it lacked predictability. It lacked consistency. And so we built a framework that made it work for them. And it's simple. Now you just have to implement it. But I think more people need to be thinking about the more hectic the world seems to get, the more dopamine rushes that people need, and delayed gratification is like yesterday's news, unfortunately. We need predictability.
Yeah, I think when things speed up, I slow down.
Yeah,
The other thing we do is we have an agenda and we go over the same agenda. Like it's the same structure every week as well, which now you're not having a meeting just to have a meeting, but
yeah,
and then during the week when there's challenges, we don't Slack or email each other all day long, all week long. We put it on our meeting and then we come up with plans to solve that. The other thing you touched on was hiring. So I wanted to ask you, do you have like a hiring kind of system, or what are some of the things you tell your clients on some best practices for hiring? Because people just get scared to hire people.
so only this is what I suggest. Only hire great. If you're 99% sure, don't hire them. If after you hire them, I've been in situations where I work with clients a lot of times in the recruiting process, where we've sent out offers and we didn't like the email back, and we called them and rescinded the offer.
Oh,
So
wow.
you got to really kind of tap into your gut. You got to check social media to see what type of personality they have on social media. Only hire great. I like a couple interviews, 2 or 3 interviews, because I think you want to make sure that the same person keeps on showing up. Pay attention to the questions they ask. If sometimes like I was at an interview and the person asked, well, at the very end, and the interview was going pretty good. We weren't sure about the person, and the person asked, hey, I live about a half an hour away, so if I'm late most days, does that matter? We're like, well, you're an adult. Yes, it matters. Like, well, if I wake up and there's traffic, we're like, all right, what this conversation is over. So, it's you got to listen to kind of like, do they come prepared? Only are great. This is to me the quintessential question that I have found in interviewing. At about 5 minutes in, when they get comfortable, you say to them something like, let's use property management as an example because that's what you do. Hey Pete, let me ask you a quick question. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how badly do you want to be in property management? They will. I've never had somebody that doesn't answer it honestly, and they'll say, "Oh, like a 7." And to me, the interview is unless somebody answers a 10 or a 9 and then works their way up through talking it through a 10, they're done. They're done
That's very
because
interesting.
if you only want someone who's passionate about a business. So if you like, when I was selling commercial real estate, I had to interview so many people every month when I was running my office. I worked at Marcus and Millichap for 12 years, 6 years as a broker, 6 years I ran the Detroit office. I had so many people I had to interview. And finally, I came up with this question on a scale from 1 to 10. How badly do you want to sell commercial real estate, investment commercial real estate? And the people that came in and said, oh, 10, 12, I used to drive with my grandpa, my dad, my mom, da da da. Those were great hires. In hindsight, and I learned this the hard way sometimes, that the people that you hire that you think are great, that I didn't ask the question, you realize they kind of only were like a 6 or a 7. And so then when you start asking the question, hey, I would start asking the question at every interview, how badly, blah, blah. They would say, like a 6 or a 7. So I'd say 6 or a 7, like, why a 6 or a 7? Well, I'm just not sure. But if I didn't ask the question and quantify it, I wouldn't have, maybe wouldn't have known because they were so like selling themselves hard.
So
But
if
that
they were
question,
like, let's say they were going to work in the accounting department, would you ask them the question on how bad do you want to sell real estate, or would you ask them the question, how much do you love, doing
accounting,
accounting?
yeah. How much, on a
Okay,
scale from 1 to 10, how much you love accounting? First of all,
got it.
accountants most accountants love being an accountant. If
Right.
you're not an accountant, you think that's boring. But if you're an accountant, you love being an accountant typically.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
so if somebody asked me on a scale from 1 to 10, how badly do you want to be an accountant? I would say -90. I mean, I remember being in accounting in college and thinking, I'm really good at math. And I couldn't even like pass the class. And I remember thinking, I'm just gonna have an accountant. Like, why am I taking this class? So, but yeah, on a scale from 1 to 10, tell me your passion for accounting. I say, I'm a 10.
Actually, I think I'm going to
They
start.
say, I just want to say one thing. If they say, my mom and dad wanted me to be an accountant, at scale from 1 to 10, I'm a 5. I don't want that energy in my office,
Right.
right?
100%.
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna take that and use that question in our hiring process.
yeah,
I'm a big fan of hiring on attitude, and I think you've hit on that, right? Like passion for what they
yeah,
do. So I go through like what are my characteristics that I want as an organization, and then I ask questions around those characteristics, and I'm looking for specific ways to answer. Do you use negatives or do you use positives? Or do you use
yeah,
I's or do you use U's? Like, and there's like some specific words that just kind of trigger us. And what we started doing is we started recording all the interviews and then transcribing them so that we can like read them back. Because sometimes you miss some stuff if you're just
yeah,
listening. So now the other thing you said is it could take you a long time to find somebody.
yeah.
Obviously, um, the more like higher level, I think the harder it is to find that person. I think the lower level, it's a little bit easier to find. Would you agree on that?
I don't know anymore. I don't know anymore. I think um, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it is so hard to find reliable people
Mm.
who actually show up and want to work and are passionate about working. I mean,
Yeah.
my son's interviewing right now for jobs. He's graduating college in May, and he wants to be in an office 5 days a week. I mean, Monday through Friday. He'll probably work on the weekends too because that's how he's wired. But he wants to be in an office, and that's like a differentiator, you know.
That's
And
crazy.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know. I think it's hard. I mean it just seems to me I interview so many people for clients, and I can't believe some of how sometimes people show up for all different levels to an interview. It like boggles my brain.
I hate to say it, but I built a whole company to, reach people in different countries because the amount that you have to pay people in the US and the level of expertise that you get or the level of person you get, it's just not it's not equal.
Yeah,
And so that's why we literally built the platform to reach other people to
yeah,
get
that's
better
great.
better qualified folks.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about to get unstuck out of your business. We talked about having an org chart, talked about hiring. What else would you recommend if someone's listening? Like, what are some of oh man, I didn't realize I was stuck in my business. This is happening. How do you, something
Yeah.
else that they can do to get unstuck?
Well, you want to really kind of take stock into not only you as a leader, but your managers and your salespeople, and across all departments. Are the people who are all of your people doing the leading activities that grow the business, or are they getting stuck in admin work? Because people can look really busy. You got to really look sometimes closely at people. They can look really busy, but they're busy doing non-leading activities, things that don't drive the business forward, things that don't drive the people forward, that don't inspire people to kind of get to their next level. And so if you have salespeople that are doing proposals all day and not on the phones and in meetings and doing sales, like legit leading activities, if you have managers that are not walking and talking and calling and texting and going on appointments and influencing and raising their people up to be their next 0.01% best selves, and if you have leaders that are not spending time tightening their message to all the different generations that are within companies today, and then you have higher leadership that has not taken a closer look at reevaluating what the meetings look like within an organization. And what I mean by that is I have a time management workshop that I do train. I've been doing it for 8 years. And one of the things I extracted from that is a training and a keynote I do called Cut Your Meetings in Half. Because there's like this crazy thing where, like, during COVID, it kind of went away and now it's back. Like, the amount of egos at a meeting that have to pound their chests and say in 10 minutes what could be said in 40 seconds, and 2 3 hour meetings that could be 35 to 40 minutes, and 60-minute meetings that could be 30 minutes. It's like, I talk to so many people, they're like in so many meetings all day, they can barely get to their work.
Yeah.
And the meetings have no agendas. They have no ownership. They're not prepping people to come to the meeting. They're not forcing people to actually think and prepare for a meeting. They leave the meetings where nobody has specific and measurable goals. Nobody knows who owns exactly what, and there's no true deadlines, and the follow up is lacking. And so you take all that, and then you walk into a company and say, "Oh, everybody's overwhelmed, and nobody has any time." It's because the framework is just not there. And so you can make some really small changes that make a really, really big impact. You just got to kind of zoom out as an observer. And a lot of times you need somebody like myself, like you, who can come in and say, okay, let's dissect. Okay, these people are doing this, these are doing this. Let's get some virtual assistants for this. Let's get a framework for it. And you just organize a little bit. It doesn't take a lot, but it sure goes a long way.
You made me laugh because there's a couple of things there that I got a couple of personal stories. So one is I used to work for a big firm called Stage Stores. They owned about 700 plus stores, retail when retail was pretty good back in the early 2000s. And every time I would see my boss or like the C-suite,
Yeah,
I used to grab my hair. I had hair back then. I grab my hair and
yeah,
I do this. I walk like I was always stressed. Like I had something that
yeah,
like I was always busy with something. And I used to carry papers with me. And they thought I
yeah,
was the busiest guy in the world. I think one time I won Employee of the Quarter. I think just because
yeah,
they saw me walking around stressed out in the hallways.
yeah,
The second thing was there's a book by Patrick Lencioni called Death by Meeting.
yeah. It's a great book.
I
He's
love
great.
it.
All of his books are great. I love his books. Yeah,
I love the way he writes. Yeah. And
yeah,
so so when my company Empire was purchased by Mind, which was a venture-backed company, I used to have all these meetings. I used to be in meetings all the time. So I bought my boss that book and sent it to him in
yeah.
California.
Right. It's like, remember, it's like sometimes, remember back to school with Rodney Dangerfield, he didn't want to go to class, so he sent his assistant. It's like,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
I hear,
leverage.
I hear about people who call these emergency meetings and then just don't show up. They send their secretary. Well, it's like what it's so backwards. Like really, everybody can have way more effective meetings. It's something that I'm giving a keynote next week, to 30 leaders within an organization on how to cut their meetings in half.
Yep.
Because there also becomes kind of this like sub fear and culture where nobody can stand up and say we have to make this change. We have to change the meetings. There's too many egos in the room because politically it doesn't necessarily maybe work. And so you can't have their voice. You have to have somebody come in and reset it. So then they can say, the speaker can say what's going on, and then people can speak, have their voice be heard, and then change and awareness can be, elevated.
Yeah, I would say at VPM, every one of my meetings has an agenda.
Yeah,
So like we're not meeting just to meet. The other thing that we do, and I'll get your opinion on this. So, now there's teamwork and Slack and email, and there's all these ways to kind of communicate. More and more people are working virtual. And so two things. One is we don't allow slacking back and forth all day long. It's just like if you have a question or whatever, you can slack. But any kind of issue that comes up, we put it on an issues list, and that's part of our agenda on each meeting. And we meet either
yeah,
daily or weekly. So we really minimized the amount of back and forth. Um, and then the second thing that we do, and I'm losing my train of thought because I had two things, and now I can only think of the one thing: the Slack, and basically, the other thing was now that we're virtual, um, I use meetings part of the time to build the culture or kind of maintain that culture. And
yeah,
I know sometimes it looks like we're wasting time because we're talking about like today, we talked about the Super Bowl coming this weekend
yeah,
and asking the Filipino folks, hey, do you know what the Super Bowl, right? Just it
yeah,
sounds like it doesn't mean anything. And I let it go on for about 10 minutes and then we get kind
yeah.
of get to business. Where's your stance on that stuff? Because that's
I think it's great. I
pretty
think it's
good.
great. You can't. I mean, I'm not saying cut it down, be rigid, be black and white. There's great, but part of the agenda is rapport building and getting to know and laughing and this and. But that doesn't mean you then have to have a 2 hour meeting, right?
Right.
It's like there's a piece of it, and then the person who's leading needs to be able to transition out of that, right? It's like okay, that's what. But a lot of times you have the person who's leading it then tell a 10-minute story. And now all of a sudden you're 20 minutes behind. And then you're
Right.
trying to squeeze everything. So it's just one thing I find, again, I'm not necessarily, I don't mean to like talk about myself and say this is like what I find with my coaching model is, but what I find is when you have an agenda, right? So when I'm talking to clients, we have 15 minutes or 30 minutes. They have an appointment right after, and so do I. And so you're kind of forced to be tight. Hey, how are you? How's everything going? Good. How's your family? Great. Let's dive in.
Right.
And when people can mentally predict that kind of the flow of the conversation, then it makes it easier. But I'm never one to say, oh, be rigid or this. Like you got to have fun and get to know people and rapport build and build all of that type of stuff. but people can only receive so much. Just going back to what I said, so it's not like you don't need an agenda with 500 things on it. It's like, okay, because if you're consistently executing in some of the ways we've talked about, then hey, here's the three things this week. Here's the four things this week. Here's the five. Right? You become you get in flow, and that way you're not. So you just got to kind of every company's got to find their cadence.
When we meet, I have a small team. I have, I think, 11 or 12 of us. We meet daily for about 30 minutes, called the
Yeah,
Daily Huddle. And we go over, we have an agenda, is about five or six things. And then we have a couple of issues um, that we solve, not just the issue, but we solve the root cause. So we don't have lots of issues, blah, blah. I call them taps, two by fours, and Mack trucks. I solve them at the tap level.
yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on a daily huddle? You think I can continue doing this till like how many people you think? And then it's like, hey, now you got to split your daily huddles up by
I
department.
love daily huddles. Listen, if you can, I think daily huddles are really important to set course. I think it's really important that people come prepared to daily huddles and see if you can cut it by 5 minutes. You take 5 minutes and you times it by the amount of people that are in that group and you compound that over time, that's a lot of time, right?
Yep.
And so, if you can make it 20 minutes and not lose the feeling of it, or make it 22 minutes, you give people 8 minutes back times the amount of people that are in the meeting, times that per week, times year, then you're giving them a lot of time back. And maybe 20 minutes, half the 5 minutes of that time is just them sitting in their chair, taking a breath. Maybe some of that time is doing some work or catch up work, or, it's all about how you take the extra time and divvy it out. Some for you, some for your family, some for your business.
Do you think there's a certain amount of people at some point where the you it's just not it doesn't get you the the juice isn't worth the squeeze?
Well, for a daily huddle,
Yeah. Like if I have
I
like
think I
48
think
people on there, is that too many? Like once you get like at some point, I'm thinking you have to break it off and do departmental daily huddles versus a company daily huddle.
anytime you get anything over nine, it changes it.
Mm. I'm
It's
so
like,
I'm at the limit at 10 or 11.
yeah, I think so. I think you
Yeah.
lose the intimacy. When managers, I always know when a manager calls me or an owner calls me and says, "I'm having a lot of trouble." Or somebody will come and say, "I've been managing people for a long time and I'm having trouble." I said, "Let me guess, you just went from 9 to 10." And a lot of times they'll say, "How did you know?" Because
Interesting.
there's just a difference from single to double digits. And so I think to keep it intimate, those huddles can be great. They're great. And sometimes the 5 minute huddles or the 10 minute huddles are great too, because you get a jolt of dopamine with no lag,
Right. Right.
right? There's no like, oh my God, I listened to this person talk for 5 minutes and this person talk for 5 minutes. So
You just on, just boom,
yeah.
go,
So boom.
knock
So
it out.
you gotta figure it out. Yeah.
All right. All right, John, we're gonna hit a commercial break real quick, and then we're gonna put you in the lightning round. Very
All right,
scary.
good.
Very scary. All right, we'll be right back, everybody. All right, John, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, here we go. Okay. All right, let's see. What is one piece of advice you'd give someone just starting out in business?
Um, Ask for help a lot. Like, never be afraid to ask for help. Embrace if you're young, embrace your youth. Don't try to like be 30 or 40. If you're 20, be 20. People will want to help you out. Uh, and if you try to be something that you're not, it turns people off.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
I liked it when I was a kid. Pineapple on pizza. Then I didn't, and my kids do. So yeah, I'll go for a yes.
All right. What was your first job?
My first job, I worked at camp. I was a camp counselor,
Camp
and
counselor?
I worked as a camp counselor. Yeah,
What is your ideal vacation?
being with my wife and kids, doesn't matter where we are.
Okay. What is something most people don't know about you?
I would say that I'm more of an introvert than people think. I like my I'm a homebody. I like, I just like being home with my wife, with my kids. I'm not as social as people think.
If you could have dinner with anyone alive, who would it be?
Um, Anyone alive? Yeah, that's a tough question for me today. You know, the world is so crazy. There's some of the people that I would have wanted to have dinner with, I don't want to have dinner with anymore. Um, you know, so it's and for a multitude of reasons, which could be a different podcast. But so I don't know if I'd want to have dinner. I would say if I could have dinner with anybody in the world, legit, it would just be my wife and kids.
All right, you get to do that as often as you like, or
Yeah,
kids are out of school. Kids
my
are
kids are
out
in
of the house
college
now.
right now,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right. What is a book or podcast that you would that has impacted your business or life?
So I love reading, and I'm reading I'm reading a book right now that I'm loving. But there's a my favorite book of 2024 was Smart Brevity, which
Smart
is
brevity. Okay.
it's by the guys with of Axios, and it's just the book is great. The book is great, and I'm reading a book right now which I'm loving, which is called. Hold on, I'm going to tell you what it is called. It is called. Where's my? Where are all my books? Oh, here we go. Um, get a meeting. You can. I don't know why my. I think it's called. You can get a meeting with anybody, with anyone.
You can get a meet with anyone. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What is one challenge you're facing in your business?
I don't know if I would call it a challenge. Now that both my kids are in college, I want to start speaking more because I can. And when my kids were home, I wanted to be home. I traveled, I spoke, but it was more. It was never me proactively pursuing it. It was just what kind of came my way through my clients, etc. So now I don't know if it's a challenge, but now I just hired someone, or I'm in the process of hiring someone to kind of grow that piece of my business. I don't know if I would call it a challenge, but
I'm saying more of an opportunity. Yeah.
it's more of an opportunity. Yeah,
All right. What do you prefer, dogs or cats?
dogs. I have two of them. Yeah,
You dog guy. All right.
yeah, yeah.
All right, John, you're off the lightning round. If someone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
They can call me at my cell phone 248-535-7796, or they can go to johndwoskin.com.
And that's Dwoskin. And
Yes,
John is Jon.
correct. Yes,
JonDwoskin.com.
yes.
And if you are listening to this podcast and you're not a member of NARPM, um, feel free to go to narpm.org or call them at 800-782-3452. And if you are interested in hiring, and call John, and John will help you out, tell you identify all your org charts, and you find out that you need to hire some remote team members, give us a try at vpmsolutions.com. We have about 39,000 profiles and growing by about 100 each week. It's free for you to create a profile, browse, look through. The way we make money is once you hire somebody and you pay them, that remote team member pays us 10%. John, thanks so much for being here. See you, everybody.
Pete, thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.